Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Data for Food 2030 podcast. In this podcast series, we focus on the project's 9 case studies. These are real life examples that aim to map and improve the data economy for food systems. In today's episode, we spotlight the case study Real Time Fresh Data, or else Direct. For this reason, I'm very happy to welcome Anna Lamberty from the project partner Europool System, the leading logistics provider of reusable packaging in the European fresh supply chain. Anna, as an expert in the field of fresh data and IoT monitoring, will walk us through the direct case study. Anna, welcome and thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being here with us today.
Yes, hello also from me to everyone, and thank you for having me here.
So let's start from the beginning. Could you give us an overview of the direct case study and its main goals?
Yes, sure. So our direct case study, we have two partners in there, both from Germany. So first we have RTB, that's a research institute, and we have Europool System, that is a company, as you already mentioned. Europool System is dealing or is a provider of returnable transport items. So think of reusable trays for fruit and vegetable transport. And these trays, they are rented out by Europool System, are filled with produce, travel along the supply chain until the supermarket, where you might have seen them already. So trays where fruit and vegetables are sold in. And after the product is sold, they are returned to Europool System for cleaning. And then this whole cycle starts again. And the key objective of our case study is promoting this circular economy in the fruit and vegetable sector by using these returnable transport items, but also by using the smart and digital services which are connected to it. And these services enable customers of Europool System to share and use data along the food chain. And more specifically, in the case study, we want to find out how we can start building up a data space. So a data space is a structured and governed infrastructure for controlled data sharing between participants, so supply chain stakeholders.
Thank you very much for this introduction. And I would like you to also tell us what sparked the idea for launching this case study.
Yeah, so the idea was sparked by the challenges that we see that many stakeholders in the sector have. So first of all, one big challenge is to connect stakeholders along the supply chain to exchange data. That's not so easy because many use very different systems. The systems might not be interoperable, so they cannot really communicate with each other. And also a very big challenge is that the collaborations between stakeholders are very dynamic. So one retail chain, for example, they have so many different suppliers and they have different contracts that changes a lot. So it's not really like a steady supply chain as you maybe imagine, but it's more like a network. And that brings a lot of challenges. And we also see that digitalization brings a lot of challenges to the stakeholders in the supply chain. And we want to bring that together in the case study to see how we can ensure that every organization can use the services that we offer and has only access to the information and data that are relevant for them and that they are allowed to see.
And to achieve all these goals, are you employing any key activities in this case study?
So as I said, we want to make sure that every organization has authorized access to their data along the food chain. And the key activities that we are doing right now are exploring the journey from traditional user management, so user management with email and password, towards a decentralized user management with digital identities. And that's important to make organizations access digital services in a structured way. And it has two sides. So the first is the technical side, where we really look at which data space technologies can be used for this and what is needed to make these technologies end-user friendly, because currently they're very much in a development stage. And the other side is the operational side. So which infrastructure does exist in the fruit and vegetables chain, who needs to be involved in the change process, and which constraints are there and must be considered, because it's a running business and we cannot just interrupt any processes. And so, in essence, we look at which components, technical components, and which processes are needed and must be brought together And we will want to start with realizing a small data space with 2 participants. But we want to realize it in a way that it's open for other participants to join.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned challenges before. Have you encountered any challenges along the way in the implementation of this case study?
Yes, definitely. So, for example, as I mentioned already, the complexity of the fruit and vegetable sector, fruit and vegetable chains, is really challenging also for this case study. Because when we speak of a supply chain, we tend to think of a linear sequence of one stakeholder after another. But as I said, it's rather more a supply network. And also when you then add returnable transport items as the fruit and vegetable trays to the equation, it's more a circle. So it's a really complex system. And that makes our case study challenging. And also another topic is that it's a real challenge to explain to other people what are we doing, either within our organization but also outside, because it's a highly technical topic and we use very specific terms and vocabulary. And also for me, it took quite long to really understand what the terms and vocabulary means. So it's sometimes hard to communicate about it. But it's also why I like the idea of this podcast, because we try to communicate the topic to a broader audience.
And despite the challenges, could you share with us what progress have you made so far?
So our progress was, at first, in the beginning of the case study, we focused a lot on really technology-wise, which additional applications or services could be developed, for example, with IoT sensors. But then we realized that there's already a lot of technology, and there's also another need, which is more related to the way how the data from all this technology is made accessible, and all the organizational effort connected to it. Because often the challenge is not so much to find a new technology, but to make it work in already existing environments. But that's very important, of course, because the people and organizations that want to work with it somehow have to integrate it in their work environment. And that's why we decided to focus in our case study, especially on the user management. And from that moment on, we investigated how to support that with data space technology. And so that was our journey from the last years.
And now let's see how all these make a difference practically. How will the results benefit your stakeholders?
So the access to digital services will be easier, more structured and standardized also. And that can lower the threshold also for smaller stakeholders. So think of farmers or traders to join a data space and use the offered digital services. And at the same time, it is not limited to the interaction between our customers and Europol system, but we aim to keep the entrance barrier low by using open source software and open standards to make it possible to integrate also other data and service providers in the data space to add new services. So, for example, mobile apps that are not necessarily provided by us, but also by other data providers, so that data sharing between customers and also new stakeholders is made easier.
Thank you very much. So you're planning to have a lot of benefits for the stakeholders you're targeting. And now let's talk a little bit more about future impacts of this case study. What do you expect from the ongoing work in the direct case study?
So we see that data exchange will be facilitated, and the use of returnable transport item-based systems, so as, for example, the fruit and vegetable trays, will be improved. And that means that time and effort to collect, find and exchange data will be reduced, and in some cases even enabled in the first place. If you have all that data more findable and accessible, you can create knowledge from it, and then also have a look at optimization potential in the supply chains. And that can lead to improvements regarding, for example, food quality. If you better know what are the conditions for example, temperature conditions in the supply chain, you can use it for reducing food waste. If you know where is more the need to distribute the food, which food has a shorter shelf life, for example, and needs to be distributed first. And you can also minimize the negative environmental effects of food transportation, for example, by making your logistic network more efficient. And also an interesting aspect that we can foresee in the future is that the collected and distributed information could be shared with consumers, for example, about regionality, because, we just contribute to an easier tracking and tracing of food.
And now one last question before we finish our discussion for today. How will this case study support the broader aims of the Data for Food 2030 project?
The case study will mainly contribute to two of the broader project objectives. So the first one is testing solutions and providing recommendations. And the second one is identifying barriers and drivers. So more concretely, of course, we envision a certain solution in our case study. As I said, the data space for sharing information along the fruit and vegetable supply chain related to returnable transport items. And we will of course test this envisioned solution and all our developments very thoroughly. And from that we can share insights and lessons learned with the other case studies in this project, but also with project partners, and also, of course, with the broader audience, like we do, for example, in this podcast, that we just try to share what we learn about it, and maybe somebody out there, can build upon it.
Exactly. What we want to do is reach as many stakeholders as possible and help them learn more about this case study and, of course, the Data for Food 2030 project. So thank you very much for sharing all your insight with us today.
Yes, thank you also.
And as for you, dear viewers and listeners, thank you very much for watching this episode, and don't forget to stay tuned for all the next episodes.